Hello, Malcolm. I'm Sarah, and in this video, I'm going to go over water for you. And we're going to look at structured water, bulk water, exclusion zone water, deuterium depleted water, and I'm just going to touch on hydrogen water at the end. It's going to be a slide presentation style video, just because for some people who are new to this, there'll be a lot of information, but it's also nice to have things all in one place. This is a presentation I did for my membership group, and the link to join that for more of these kind of videos is in the description. So let's get started. If we think about water, it exists as a crystalline state, which we would call ice, and it's a solid. Then we've got the liquid state, which we'll just say is water in a glass, and then a gas, which would be steam. So this is what we learn about in school. However, nobody ever talks about the fourth phase of water, which is the gel-like water. There's a state that falls in between solid and liquid, and it's like a liquid crystal inside us and other living things. And this gel water or EZ water or coherent domain water is absolutely vital for life, and you'll find out why as we go through the presentation. Then we've got different types of water that you may have heard of, and we've got the bulk water, structured water, exclusion zone or EZ water. And as I said, this can also be referred to as the fourth phase or coherent domain. We've also got metabolic water from the mitochondria, and then deuterium depleted water as well. So bulk water, this is a water that's in a liquid state, a true flowing liquid state. And the waters are sort of less, the water molecules are less organized. It's quite random and it doesn't really have any structure. There is going to be microstructures in it, but we wouldn't call this structured water. And this would be something like tap water or distilled or reverse osmosis water. So when you distill water or do reverse osmosis, you basically strip everything out. So you like have a blank slate. So you shouldn't drink straight distilled water or reverse osmosis water. You need to remineralize it first, because the water needs to be mineralized in order to form structures, because the minerals provide a charge as well. When it comes to water and charge and memory, everything is energy and information, and the water can carry energy as well as information. And vibration is a way in how we receive and store information and hold energy. And this is how water does it. So this idea of making sounds to the water or putting intentions into water, this is where it gets really interesting. And again, inside our bodies, if we talk about memory, water does hold memory. And again, the idea of holding traumas and stuff in the body is something when I was a scientist, I didn't really believe in. But now, since studying the work of people like Vader Austin and experimenting myself, I definitely 100% believe this is true. The environment of the water that you drink or have inside your body is going to influence how the water is formed or made, or what kind of information it has and what energy it has. So it's how you expose yourself or your body to different things like sunlight or grounding or non-native EMFs. That's going to affect the water in your body. But the things that you do to the water that you drink is going to change its properties and the information it carries. Structured water is inside our bodies, but it's mainly found in the water that we drink. So for example, this water is in our blood, the water in between cells or our cerebral spinal fluid. And with structured water, the water basically organizes itself and structures itself into microgeometries or shapes, instead of water molecules just randomly interacting with each other. And these geometric patterns or shapes are going to be completely different depending on what kind of light was shone on the water, what intentions were put in, the environment of the water. So the best way to look at this and give you this idea of water and the microstructures will be to look at Vader Austin's work. So here you can see that there's a particular protocol that she has of using Petri dishes and finding that state when water's just about to freeze. And you can see here that in one of her Petri dishes, she's written the number 4, and you can see the ice response of the water. You can see the 4, and there's no way you could have put that in. And then there's the photo of a braid, which I'm not sure who it is, but you can see the braid structure in the ice response. And even this picture of a photo of a face, you can see that in the water that was frozen, you can see the extreme likeness of this face. And there's hundreds and hundreds of these images that Vader Austin has. I think it's over 50,000. And she repeats each one about 50 times just to be certain. So it's very scientific, and there's no way that you could put this into the water. It's an example of water being able to hold a structure to the point where we can actually even see it with the naked eye. So I just find this really exciting and interesting. And again, water's so poorly understood. Even now, high-level scientists, once they've made it in their careers, they often turn to study water properly. For example, Luc Montagnier used to be, I think, a virologist, and then he made it, and then he moved into studying water, because oddly enough, it's still by some viewed as sort of a woo subject, when it's far from that. It's like the essence or the part of life. But just briefly, to structure water, like I said, you need particular minerals. Then sunlight will structure water because it's providing energy as well as information. You can do it with a red light and a UV light. So Dr. Pollock has shown that red light structures water, and then UV light provides extra energy, so this can expand or create more structure. These also expand and create exclusion zone water, which we'll come to in a minute, because this is where people get confused with the different kinds of water. So still, we're talking about structuring water in a vessel and then drinking it. You can do it with magnetism, for example, putting your water in a copper vessel, preferably an egg-shaped, because of the way the 0-point energy works. This is a better way to structure in an egg-shaped container, but any shape will do. And you can put it on, say, the ground or a Magnetico or down in a cellar. Vortexing, this is a way to add structure to the water, and the way the heart functions, because the heart's not a pump, it's a vortexing suction hydraulic ram device. And I'm going to make a whole video on why the heart isn't a pump. So basically, the way the heart works, it vortexes the water, so it creates these spirals. And because of this, this is how it creates the toroidal field or the torus field in the body, which is our main biofield. But you can buy vortexing devices and make vortex water that's structured yourself. Then we've got things like analemma wands and cosmic towers, these kinds of devices. And also affirmations, putting them into water. So our ancestors, regardless of religion or creed or belief, always treated water with great respect, and they believed in being able to have holy water or healing water, and that we could put certain energetics or intentions into water. And like I showed you with Veda Austin's ice crystals, sometimes people just go through the motions of putting affirmations into water, but their mind and their heart are elsewhere. Whereas when you do the ice technique, you can actually see whether you did succeed and put your thought or your affirmation into the water, because you can compare before and afters. That was something that I was doing at the weekend with my friend. We made lots and lots of structures using tap water, distilled water, mineralized water, and then we put different thoughts in, drew things on Petri dishes and froze it. So there's a lot to it. And like anything, even if you think something's woo or stupid, rather than just attacking it, why don't you just try it for yourself? At the weekend, when we were doing our water structuring experiments, we also tried out this here. So this is Crystal Source, and it's naturally programmable drinking water. So I'm not affiliated with this company in any way. So it's organically deuterium depleted, and it also has certain minerals and crystals of silica in it. And it's meant to be easier and better to be able to structure this as sort of a Veda Austin style way, or put affirmations like healing or love or whatever you want to put into your water. So it's just in case people want to know a bit more about the experiments we were doing at the weekend. So now if we think about the exclusion zone, the fourth phase, or the coherent domain, so this is now getting to the other end of the spectrum. So we started off with bulk water, then we moved into structured water that has microgeometries or shapes, something that's recognizable to not be just random water flowing. And this gel-like water is very, very organized in its structure, and it structures itself into hexagonal shapes, which can be viewed under a microscope. And this water is negatively charged because it pops out an electron. So it charge separates into positive and negative. Whereas the bulk water we were talking about at the beginning, that's not charged, it's neutral. So this negative charge that the exclusion zone or coherent domain of water has is absolutely essential for life and for health. And the exclusion zone or fourth phase or coherent domain is mostly found inside your body, and it forms on all hydrophilic surfaces. So that's a water-loving surface. So that can be a blood vessel around a protein, around a cell, in your gut lining, pretty much everywhere in your body. Wherever there's a lining, a hydrophilic one, this exclusion zone water is going to start to form. So from where we're at now, if we think about the exclusion zone water or the coherent domain being the water inside us that lines things. So it has many, many functions for lubrication, for efficient removal of substances from the body, protection, all sorts. And the other important part of the EZ water or the exclusion zone water, it's key for energy, and it's also really important for detoxification. So your EZ water is your water battery, and the less water battery you have, or the less exclusion zone you have, the lower your redox is going to be. So the more redox you've got, the more charge or power you've got. And then again, sunlight can expand and energize this EZ water in your body. So first of all, I touched on the fact it's a protective barrier. So we need this exclusion zone to line places like blood vessels, so nothing can damage the lining of the arteries or the vessels. It's also a protective barrier in the gut. So if you've got leaky gut or something like that, and you don't have enough EZ water, then things can get through and cause problems for you. Also, very importantly, exclusion zone or EZ water excludes things like toxins, all kinds of things, infectious agents, because nothing can travel through the exclusion zone other than hydrogens, electrons, and then some small minerals like potassium. And then when we look at things like cancer, there are many elements to cancer, including mitochondrial dysfunction, a lack of circadian rhythm, but also there's a water element. So whether the water was lost from the cancer later or the loss of water was part of the cancer development, we don't know, but it's definitely not a genetic phenomenon. And Dr. Tom Cowan has a good book on cancer, and he talks about the role of water in cancer, but there's a lot more I could go into. We'll keep it simple for today. So if you want to optimize your exclusion zone water levels and your redox, then getting sunlight, any is fine. We're not going into the details of light today, but as sunlight contains 43% near infrared and red light, there's always the opportunity to recharge your water battery by just going outside. Even if you went out at moonlight, there's still near infrared. Grounding, again, is a way to get free electrons from the surface of the Earth. And the more electrons we have, that's going to also incorporate itself in our exclusion zone water. And again, electrons participate in all biochemical reactions. And also electrons get charged by light. That's the photoelectric effect. So the more electrons we've got, the more charge we're going to have, and the more power and more capacity to function. Moving is going to generate electrons, and it's really important for your fascia because 70 to 71% of the body is collagen, and collagen is piezoelectric and flexoelectric. So that means that movement is going to cause pressures and tensile forces on the collagen, and then it's going to produce electrons. But the key thing about collagen is it doesn't work properly if it's dry. It needs to be nice and hydrated, because if we have dry collagen, these flexo and piezoelectric properties are lost. And then again, if we want to stimulate our collagen, it's sort of part of our fascia movement, it doesn't even have to be anything special. Any kind of movement is going to cause your fascia to move. So there are particular disciplines like Feldenkrais and Pilates and somatics yoga, which would be sort of a wide range of movements, but dancing, that's going to work, just anything. So movement is sort of man and woman's one of their greatest medicines. And then if we look at the quantum level, we can see that collagen is a pivotal part of this. And like I said, the collagen has to have a coating of EZ water, but moving in itself is going to help produce electrons, which is going to help hydrate your collagen. If we minimize tech, because non-native EMFs interfere with your water, like a microwave would dry things out. So what happens is your EZ water, your fourth phase, turns back to the bulk water, the one without the negative charge, the random water. And also you want to avoid things like alcohol and fluoride because they're electronegative, so they steal electrons, and this collapses the exclusion zone. And again, that just means it just gets turned back into the bulk water, which doesn't really do much. And again, avoiding things that steal electrons is very important. Also, things like glyphosate can disturb your exclusion zone water as well. So that's the work of Dr. Stephanie Seneff, because that ties into the role of sulfate and the structuring of the EZ water. When we move into metabolic water, this is the water that your mitochondria produce, because protons, as in hydrogens, are going to go in and they power the ATPase, which is the spinning nanomotor that the protons gradient. Protons get pushed into the intermembrane space and they fall down. They come through the ATPase, and by a variety of processes, it spins and it produces ATP as energy. And interestingly, ATP itself actually is quite electronegative, and it's definitely not the main energy source in the body. Dr. Gilbert Ling proved this a long time ago, and this has been repeated. And they found that for certain, ATP can't possibly be the energy that's powering our entire body. So ATP is really important for unfolding proteins. And then these unfolded proteins participate in our semiconductor system. But again, that's for another day. So this metabolic water the mitochondria produce, it's deuterium depleted. So that just means it's very low in deuterium, because in another presentation, I talked a lot about deuterium and said that we definitely don't want deuterium in the mitochondria. And there's a very intricate process using glycolysis and the TCA or the Krebs cycle as checkpoints to make sure that deuterium doesn't get into the mitochondria. So this happens in the mitochondria at complex 4. So the electrons flow down the electron transport chain and they combine with oxygen and hydrogen to make this deuterium depleted metabolic water in the mitochondria. The mitochondria can also recycle water as well. So we can think about this metabolic water as coming from the mitochondria. And the reason oxygen is important here is it's called or referred to as the terminal acceptor of electrons. So that just means it's the end of the chain. So in situations like pseudohypoxia, which David Sinclair wrote a paper on in 2013, and the detrimental effects of not having enough oxygen on health and accelerated aging. If you don't have enough oxygen, you can't make enough water, because we need the oxygen to bind to the electrons and the hydrogen. I want to thank my sponsor, Lightwater Scientific, who helped me deliver free valuable information to you and also allow me to have great guests on this channel. Lightwater Scientific produce the purest and most deuterium-depleted water in the world. Depleting or lowering your deuterium has numerous health benefits, from better metabolic health, more energy, greater resilience, less brain fog, increased physical performance, enhanced healing, and healthier mitochondria. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, also known as heavy water, because it's bigger and heavier than regular hydrogen. Even though deuterium makes up only 0.02% of hydrogen, it's found everywhere. Deuterium is a burden to your body because it interferes with the intricate chemical reactions that occur by slowing them down. Deuterium is kryptonite to your mitochondria, and we need healthy mitochondria to produce energy. There's over 60 years of scientific research on the negative effects of too much deuterium on health, and also the positive benefits of lowering deuterium in the body. Lightwater deuterium-depleted water is 100% safe and non-toxic. In fact, it's the closest in structure to the metabolic water that your mitochondria produce. Lightwater deuterium-depleted water comes in 5 or 10 parts per million glass or plastic bottles. So level up your health by leveling down your deuterium today. The purchase link is in the show notes, and use code Dr. Sarah for a discount off your order. So this metabolic water that the mitochondria produce that's low in deuterium, something like 5 to 10 parts per million. I mean, I think Dr. Boros has even said it can be like almost like 1 or none at all. So this water is liquid and it's deuterium depleted, and it automatically gets structured into the gelled or exclusion zone when it comes to contact with other hydrophilic surfaces in the body, which we've talked about already. So the mitochondria make metabolic water, and then it gets structured later. Now, deuterium is a problem, and it's a burden when there's too much. It's got important roles in the body, which I've gone into in another presentation. But the negative effects of deuterium is it damages the mitochondria because it's bigger than hydrogen. So it blocks up the ATPase, the spinning motor, and then that effectively sets off an inflammation cascade, and then it damages the mitochondria, and then the cell is going to be compromised, and then the organ which the cell is in is going to be compromised. Deuterium also interferes with enzymes, because wherever there's a hydrogen, a deuterium can get in as well, because it's just another form of hydrogen, an isotope. It's just bigger, has a different magnetic moment, and it has a different dielectric constant that we'll go into later. There are numerous studies showing the link between cancer and high deuterium or too much deuterium, because it's also a growth factor. That's why there's lots of deuterium in things like beans and seeds, because it's to grow a baby plant. And also things with short life cycles like flies and bacteria, they don't mind deuterium because they need to grow really quickly. Then the other problem with deuterium is it can't hold as much charge or as much energy as water that's made from hydrogen. So we'll explore that a bit more now. If we look at the dielectric constant of deuterium versus hydrogen and water and how this impacts our water battery. So let's just define the dielectric constant first. So the dielectric constant it doesn't have any units because it's a ratio, and it's a measure of a substance's or a material's ability to store or concentrate electrical energy or electrical flux. So as we're an electric being, as well as a water being and a light being, this matters a lot. So the dielectric constant of water, that's say about 150 parts per million deuterium, so just ordinary water, is about 80. And then the dielectric constant of deuterium depleted water that the mitochondria make, which I said is something like 5 parts per million and could be less, that has a dielectric constant of about 160. So what this means is that the more deuterium you have, the less the dielectric constant is going to be. So that means we have double the ability to carry energy or hold energy using deuterium depleted water that our mitochondria make. So we can just rephrase that and say the more deuterium that there is, the less bioelectric power or redox that we have. Because like I said, the deuterium can act sort of like a doping agent. So it's going to change the dielectric constant in water that's high in deuterium. This is another reason why deuterium is an energy stealer, and why high levels of deuterium can be sort of linked to things like leptin resistance, where that's just a situation where your body senses that you don't have enough energy. So you try and store energy in the form of body fat. So this is just another way of looking at how deuterium affects our energy levels. So it doesn't only damage the mitochondria, it also affects the electric charge and how much charge you can hold. So it's a bit like when you've plugged your iPhone in the wall to charge it and forgotten about it and broken the battery a little bit. It doesn't hold its charge properly, so it kind of goes flat in a couple of hours instead of holding its charge all day. So that's what happens when you've got too much deuterium in the context of you being a water battery powered being or an electric being. So the ways we can manage deuterium, if you do something like a leptin reset, that is a deuterium depletion in disguise. So my colleague Sarah Kleiner has a great leptin reset course, and I've put the link in the description if you want to do it on your own. We go through things like this in my membership group. Also, the other thing would be don't eat lots of carbs if you live somewhere where there's very low UV light, because sunlight helps to lower or deplete deuterium. Saunas and cold thermogenesis can help you deplete or remove deuterium. Exercise can, especially if you sweat. The other important thing is to get sunshine, not artificial light. So that would be blue light from screens and LEDs and computers, because first of all, the blue light discourages the deuterium from coming out of your body. It's not a deuterium depleting sort of environment to be in, but also the artificial blue light affects complex 4 in the mitochondria, the one that makes water. So you make even less of your own deuterium depleted water. You can also use deuterium depleted water along with all of the above. And again, it's something that people like Dr. Gabor Chomily have done 30 years of research on deuterium depletion protocols. He is a cancer expert, and there's an interview with Dr. Chomily on this channel. And like everything, I think the deuterium depleted water is really useful, but I also encourage people to do everything else as well, because you'll get lots of benefits from resetting your leptin, improving your circadian rhythm, cleaning up your way of eating, having more saunas and things like that. Also, there's a location component to all of this, because the water closer to the equator has more deuterium in it. And then as we go further away from the equator towards the poles or the more northern latitudes, the amount of deuterium decreases. Also, tropical fruit contains more deuterium than, say, fruit that grows in the UK. But Mother Nature has an answer for this, because the UVI index and the solar yield, so that's basically just how much UV light and then how much sun, is much higher at the closer you go to the equator. So that means even though there's more deuterium in the water and in the produce, say the fruit, there's a natural method if you go outside and use the sun there for you to deplete it. The key take-home message here is sunlight depletes and lowers deuterium. So again, moving to a sunnier environment, it doesn't have to be at the equator, will mean that if you use that, there is more wiggle room regarding your drinking water, which is going to have higher deuterium, and also eating local and seasonal produce in that area. And then finally, I just want to touch on hydrogen water, because there are lots of different ways and devices and tablets and things around that can make hydrogen water. So molecular hydrogen has about 2,000 research papers behind it, backing its medical benefits. And also the inhalation of hydrogen, because you can use hydrogen, you can use water to produce hydrogen gas in, say, the Lord's Hydrofix hydrogen maker, which after lots of research, this is the best device that you can get. And Greg, the hydrogen man, is going to be on the channel next to tell you all about hydrogen, because that's his mission in life, is to share the information. And Greg's done all the research for us, or for me, on different distillers, different machines, things like Willard water and Brown's gas that can potentially be harmful, poor quality hydrogen, making things like the hydrogen bottles that you get. If you're interested in a Lord's Hydrofix and you've heard about it already, if you go into the description, I've got $100 off code for you, because I was very skeptical for a long time and I eventually tried one, and I think the inhalation is the most powerful part of it. So that's why I love the Hydrofix so much. So it made a massive difference when I visited the US in terms of sleeping, energy, brain fog. And I would say that the inhalation is the sort of key needle mover, but the drinking of the hydrogen water from the Lord's Hydrofix also has benefits as well. So like anything, you don't have to buy anything, because if you live somewhere sunny, you look after your microbiome, everything's well sulfated in the body, your gut microbiome can make hydrogen for you. It's just, again, for some people who are on a healing journey, they're looking for things which can benefit. So I hope you found this useful and informative on water. So if you check out the description for any of the links that I've mentioned in this video, and also look out for Greg, the Hydrogen Man, on the channel next week.